All right, guys, welcome into the Go 247 podcast. I'm Glenn West, the senior writer here at the site. We have some breaking news to share with you today. Sonny Ship, as always, is joining us, our recruiting guru here at the site. Um, Javien Toviano, top 60 player in Go 247 composite rankings, number 6 cornerback, has committed to LSU. Just another really great pickup for Brian Kelly, Robert Steeples, Jordan Arsamon, the entire recruiting staff. Just a really, really big deal for LSU to land one of the more coveted, uncommitted prospects left out there. Just a really special football player that LSU is now up to 25 commits in this class, and really looking to put a strong punching stamp here on the early signing period. Sonny, I'll turn it over to you. I'll start out with a quick and easy one. Just what are they getting in this guy? What does Toviano offer to really make this a special commitment for LSU?
Well, he checks the marks as far checks the boxes as far as the having the physical side, having the physical tools. A solid 6 foot, 185, 190 guy who could come in, who could play some corner, could possibly play some safety, depending on how his body matures. But a 3 year starter in the Martin High School secondary over in the Arlington, Texas area. And that's something that I think that you look at, because the level of competition over there where they play at, they're playing some big boy ball. And so for a sophomore to be able to come in and to be able to just, not only break into the starting lineup, but also to be able to hold on to it, picked off 3 passes over the course of his career, registered over 100 tackles. I think he broke up 19 passes over those 3 years. So a guy who's active, who's getting his hands on balls. I guess you see why he's playing defense and not on offense if he's only picked off 3 of them over those 3 years. But you have to like what they're getting. Robert Steeples has to like what he's getting. You look at that room, that cornerback room. If you just look at it the way that it stands right now, you've got Seven Banks, who's a graduate student. You've got LaTerrence Welch, who played this year. He'll be a sophomore. And then you have 2 redshirt freshmen in Jordan Allen and Jalen Davis Robinson. And so you don't have a lot of guys. You don't have anyone with any experience, really, especially in purple and gold. And Seven Banks hasn't played in a while. So, he's going to have a lot of rust to work off there. So LSU needs some guys who can come in physically ready to play early. Toviano will be an early enrollee. He'll be on campus for spring ball. That'll give him a big jump right there on the process and getting acclimated to it. LSU is going to have some transfers. They're going to bring some transfers into the equation. You can't go with an inexperienced room like that to start a season. And what you think will give you a chance to play for a championship with all the pieces that LSU should have coming back. So I think Toviano, he addresses some immediate needs. And, LSU still has some work to do in that room. But, man, getting a guy like that locked up over in-state Texas A&M, Michigan, Georgia, you beat out all the heavyweights for him. And kudos to Robert Steeples. Kudos to Sherman Wilson, who played a big role in this, recruiting specialist at LSU, along with Jordan Arsamon. Those two team up to probably, give LSU just a dynamite tandem in that department. And so just a lot of guys really did a good job and helped bring home what is really, one of the, I think, cornerstones of this class.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple things there that I think really stand out. And just looking at this freshman class right now, you add Toviano to a group that includes, at the moment, Dalen Austin, Ashton Stamps, Jeremiah Hughes out of the Las Vegas area. It's a pretty loaded freshman class so far for LSU. And I think, for me, I wrote this in a piece that dropped on our site, Go247, shortly after the commitment. But this just signals to me that they're looking to get younger. There is a concerted effort to get younger in that cornerback room, in that secondary. Look, you can only use the transfer portal to make major overhauls for so long, and it's something that Brian Kelly has really talked about a lot during his tenure here, is that they want to build from freshmen up. And I think if you get guys like this, guys like Toviano, who is already really physically gifted. I mean, I don't think there's any question that physically he'll be able to walk in and pretty early compete for some playing time next year. And you couple that with the fact that, LSU is not afraid to play freshmen as they get this tenure started. So I think there's just a lot of really good opportunity for these young players to come in and compete for time early and earn their spot, and they'll see the field. But you want to mention something?
Yeah, I hear you on the want to get young theory. Here's my problem with that is that in order to get young, I think you have to have some veteran presence too.
Sure.
And when you look at, let's just consider this, that if LSU, let's say LSU didn't dip its toes into the transfer market at all.
Yeah.
And let's say they entered with what they have and what we think that they'll get. You could potentially be looking at a graduate transfer in Seven Banks, a sophomore in LaTerrence Welch, and then you've got freshman Jordan Allen, freshman Jalen Davis Robinson, freshman Javien Toviano, freshman Ashton Stamps, freshman Jeremiah Hughes, and then if you add Desmond Ricks, who should be a senior in high school next year, and then let's say you add Denver Harris, you're adding a guy who played only 5 games,
right,
last year. That to me, if you're going to make a championship run next year, you've got to get someone who's got some legitimate and real experience at the P5 level. Even when you add one piece to that, man, that is such a young DB room. And the problem that I have with that in that regard is that, okay, now you've got six guys who could potentially be in your cornerback room all in the same class.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen a year from now when only 2 or 3 of those guys are playing? That 6-man class that you brought in all of a sudden shrinks to 3. So I think it's I know what I know exactly what Brian Kelly wants to do. He doesn't want to have to rely on the transfer portal as much as he needs to, but I think that he's probably a good 2 to 3 years away from being able to do that at that position, just because of how bad of a shape it was in when he got there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And look, I think that they need to hit the portal for some extra veteran talent in the secondary, whether that's cornerback or safety, where there's still some balls up in the air with some guys who haven't made their ultimate decisions yet on whether they're coming back or not. But I was just speaking more just like, there's just a more concerted effort to try to get younger in that.
Yeah. And I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. And I get what the board, what the board is saying too, with getting all of these young cornerbacks and everything and stuff. You just run into I just think you have to be careful, because you can get yourself into a situation to where all of a sudden you've got a cornerback list now that other coaches are pointing to kids and saying, okay, well, you got 9 guys in that room right there. You got 6 in this class right here. And a lot of that stuff, a lot of that stuff, does play out in recruiting like that. And so I just think you have to kind of be careful, because, we say in recruiting that perception is a lot. And I think that it's very easy for others to create a negative perception of things when they look at those, even though rooms may not be crowded, because we know how bad LSU's cornerback position is, as far as needing depth, as far as opportunities to come in to play. Hell, 3 of those guys could come in and play next year. Could very well easily go in there and play next year. But when you've got a 45-year-old coach on the other side trying to get you to come to his school, and it can be very easy to manipulate those numbers, with these kids and with these parents. And so that's why, when I take more of a cautious approach when you start adding all these young pieces in there, that's kind of the angle that I'm coming from.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it also shines a light on player development. They're big on player development down there. You bring in these freshmen, you're hoping that maybe a couple of them can be ready to play next year in some spot areas. But it's a risk. It's a calculated risk that they're taking with all these guys in this freshman class. I agree with you completely there. And it does beg the question, what does this cornerback room look like in terms of transfer portal additions? You mentioned Denver Harris, another young guy with a lot of eligibility left that got his feet wet a little bit in the SEC last year. But I mean, outside of him, is there anybody that you kind of keeping your eye on, or is there just your overall need for another veteran voice in that room?
Yeah, he has 3 years left to play, and then Gavin Holmes, a
Mhm.
kid out of New Orleans, played his high school ball at Rummel. Played. He's got 2 years left to play. Spent his time up at Wake Forest. Got a good. He's one of those guys that you look at and you say, okay, he's not he wasn't a lockdown corner who just controlled everything to where you look at him and you say, okay, this is a definite plug and play guy right here. But I think he's a guy who could potentially be that kind of guy,
Sure.
who could potentially be a plug and play guy. But I don't hold him in the same regard as maybe we did a Jarrett Bernard Converse when he
Right.
came over, to where when he came over, you were like, okay, this guy's going to have one side.
He
You
better
know,
start.
Right, exactly. So he's a guy. So he's one that from talking to some folks, I know that they like, and in the transfer portal, what we see right now. I have a feeling that the transfer portal is going to look a lot different here. Schools are just now getting out. Or not just now getting out, but are wrapping up finals, where kids are now home. They've been home for a couple of days, or they're going to be getting home for a couple of days. You're going to have bowl practices coming up, to where some guys are probably holding out hope to say, okay, let me see what I get in the bowl practices. That'll give me a kind of an idea with all the guys opting out. And then when they still don't see those reps in the bowl practices, I think you're going to see some more guys that's going to kind of lead to maybe that late push that we see in the portal,
Sure.
after the bowl games and things of that nature. So there's still some guys who could come out, but in a situation to where if LSU could only, if LSU only got Denver Harris and Gavin Holmes at cornerback, I think you feel, okay about that situation going
Yeah.
into the spring, just knowing that, okay, we've got to have some young guys step up. And LaTerrence Welch could be one of those players.
Right.
He's a guy that, he's a guy that they like his height, they like his length, they like the way that he held up himself as a true freshman this past year. I think he saw action in about 10, 11, maybe 12 games.
Mhm.
A lot of work on special teams and stuff. But he was one of those guys to where if it got to a point to where they had to start looking into that freshman class of guys, he was going to be the next one up.
Right.
And so I think he's a guy that you look at going into the spring who probably has as good of an opportunity as anyone else, to have one of those starting spots when we get the first chance to see him in the spring.
Yeah, absolutely. And just another thing to add on top of that, I mean, you can, land Harris and Holmes, or add whatever you need to in this window right now. But there's a second transfer portal window opening after the spring. And so it could be a scenario where you take all these freshmen, you take all these young guys, see what you got, and then maybe you reevaluate again after the spring and maybe hop in the portal for a more veteran voice that might be available at that time. So I think, I believe Seven Banks was a late addition, wasn't he? Or was he
Yeah, he was a summer edition.
yeah, he
Yeah.
was a summer edition.
Yeah, he
So
was a summer edition,
yeah,
and I think he was he was a graduate student too.
yeah,
He had already graduated, and so they have that more flexible window to where they can transfer at any time. Just like Jaden Daniels last year, he
sure.
came in. I think it was like March,
Yeah,
basically, or late February when
right.
he came in.
Yeah,
So
so there's
within that
there's there's
same
other
window.
opportunity out there if you need it. I think if you swing and miss on a couple guys this cycle, you could certainly look at after the spring at reevaluating things. So we just wanted to come in here, get a quick reaction on this news. This is obviously really big news. We got another big decision coming up in the next week with Desmond Ricks, who's going to be signing during the early signing period. So we'll
And he'll
be
be on campus this weekend
yeah,
too.
he'll be on campus this weekend, so we'll be back and we'll be able to give you guys a little bit more inside stuff as the week moves along. So we'll be back later in the week for another pod, but just wanted to get up this reaction news. Big land for LSU to get Javien Toviano to a secondary that's hoping to really build on some youth talent here moving forward. So with that, we'll be back and catch you guys later.